But then after a few weeks, I started to notice common themes. And one of the common themes I got, because I was becoming more emotionally aware by identifying these things, is I'd be in a consult doing a vaccination, which is about as low stress as a consult should be. But yet at the end of that consult being absolutely drained, what I noticed is it wasn't the work I was doing, it was the people I was interacting with. So if someone was really demanding and high strung, they would take all the energy from me and I would just leave or finish that consult being exhausted.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Caprino, and welcome to my podcast, Finding Brave. I've created this show for everyone who longs to create something bold and brave in their life, to rise up, speak up, and stand up for who they are, and to reach their highest and biggest visions. Each week, I'll be speaking with inspiring guests from all walks of business, leadership, entertainment, the creative arts, and the entrepreneurial world. And they'll be sharing their intimate stories of finding brave and offer their best strategies for building your most rewarding, joyful, and meaningful life, business, and career. Hello, everybody. Kathy Caprino here. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. I'm finally feeling over my COVID, and you're seeing this and hearing this a little later than we're recording it, but that was a little rough in many ways. But here we are, healthy, and I am so excited to have my guest, Steve Oehley from New Zealand. It's 8 a.m. God bless you, Steve. And, I forget how we first met, Steve, but I certainly was on your wonderful podcast, Escape the 9 to 5. But before we get into it, I love people to know how my guests and I connect. But we are talking about Escape the 9 to 5, how to do that, pursuing more meaningful work. And Steve has an amazing personal and professional story all about that, and a business all around that. And I'm going to read your bio. But Steve, how did we first meet? Can you tell everyone that? I forget.
Before I tell you, Kathy, I just want to let your audience know that Kathy was really stressing about getting my last name right, and she's got it right on the money. So.
Yay! Oh my God! There's nothing more disrespectful than getting someone's name wrong. So thank you. Thank you for guiding me through it.
So yes. So how did we meet? So Kathy is obviously, as our listeners will know, quite influential in the LinkedIn space. And I think I'd seen a number of her posts and reached out to her because her message aligned so well with my audience on the podcast.
How was it?
So yeah, we connected there. And then Kathy came on my podcast and we had a really good chat. We got talking about tennis as well as stuff that's actually relevant to the podcast.
My mother, your baby, the whole thing. We talk
bringing up childhood issues with your 97-year-old mother.
That's it. You remember. Well, I had a wonderful chat, and we're going to link to that. I hope you'll listen to that. And let me tell you about Steve, and then I'm going to dive in here to some questions I really want to know, and I know everyone listening does. So Steve followed the traditional path, getting good grades at school and college, graduated as with a well-respected job as a veterinarian. I love what vets do. Oh, it's so inspiring to me. But finding himself unhappy, he noticed so many friends and colleagues who were successful on paper, but not enjoying their jobs and looking to change. But they often do not know what to change and how to do it. And also they have financial commitments, which mean they need a well-paying job. So Steve founded Escape the 9 to 5, a podcast and coaching program that provides a framework for college-educated professionals looking to design a career that works for them. And you're also talking a little bit about a potential pivot, Steve, right? You want to say a word about that?
Yeah, so we just talked before the interview got started, just in terms of the reality is with any business, be it a coaching program or any business, is that you really do need to niche down and find your target audience. And while the Escape the 9 to 5 journey does apply to any working professionals, my niche really now is focusing on medical professionals, in particular veterinarians, because that's my journey. And you're going to relate better to your people if you're talking directly to them, as opposed to trying to really talk to what would be probably 500 million people who are college educated working professionals.
I couldn't agree more. And, that's lesson number one for everyone listening. I think a lot of us starting out, we're scared to niche down. I don't know if I forget what I mentioned on your show, but, starting out, I loved working with professional women, but that didn't mean I wanted to block interest from men. But wonderful branding experts have said, look, didn't you say you understand women? There's a shortcut you have with women. You went through all these challenges that you help women with. And, I finally got over my fear of saying I'm a woman's career and leadership coach. But the wonderful
Sure.
thing is the more niched you are, the more successful you are, and the word gets around. And I think you're more successful generally, frankly,
Yeah.
even though you have a tighter niche. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
100%. And the sort of the framework to escaping the 9 to 5 would work for an accountant and a lawyer, but there's individual problems that an accountant and a lawyer would have that I can't really understand. Whereas within the medical professional space, I can really understand what it means to be on call, how to balance the mental demand of the job with trying to potentially find something to do on the side, where I
Wow.
know, because I've been in that situation where you've worked your 40-hour week and you're mentally exhausted, but you're trying to find that little bit of energy to actually figure out something else to do with your life. And I guess people might be wondering,
Mm.
Steve's a veterinarian. He's found the dream job. How possibly can he be unhappy? And
Yeah,
here's the
start
funny
there.
part.
Yeah.
So veterinarians have one of the highest rates of depression and suicide as a profession. So
No.
it's one of those, people talk about architects and veterinarians, those sort of dream jobs, but we're essentially being
Huh.
sold a little bit of a lie. And it's not to say that there aren't aspects of being a vet that have been amazing. It's just that we get convinced to do these jobs at a very young age when we don't even understand ourselves. Most of us make our career decisions when we're teenagers, when our brains aren't even yet fully formed. And then we go to college and we rack up a huge amount of student debt to qualify in what is a very stressful job. And I guess understanding that what looks successful on paper isn't necessarily what actually is going on in reality.
Wait,
You
I
know,
have so many questions. Can I ask
yeah,
makes
sure.
what makes being a vet so stressful?
So I think from my own personal perspective, it is the having the demands. These days, pets are almost as high up in the family as children.
Absolutely.
And so people's expectations on what a veterinarian should be able to do are just quite frankly unrealistic. So if you've got an injury, you go to your physio. If you've got a simple medical sickness, you go to your GP. If you need an X-ray, you go to a
I see.
radiologist. If
I see.
you know, if you
Anything.
need your bloods taken, you go and get your bloods taken. If you need your results analyzed, that's a pathologist who does that. There's so many different areas within human medicine, but then a
Wow.
veterinarian is expected to not only do all that, but the expectation is that they do all that to the same level as what their GP, their radiologist, their physio, their surgeon. That's the other thing. We're doing surgery.
Steve,
Um,
and I've had pets all my life. I've
and,
never thought of this. On top of that, I'm crying when you talk because I lost my beagle a year ago. Look at me. I can't even talk
oh,
about it.
sorry,
They
Kathy.
are our children. I don't care that they have 4 legs, but they also have short lifespans, many of
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
So you might be seeing someone with 3 different animals over a course of 20 years who are losing their precious babies,
100%.
right? Is
100%.
that
Yeah.
another part of
I mean, that's definitely a huge part of it too, is just, just to address the elephant in the room is we perform euthanasia. And I think that's where I
terrible?
guess, I mean,
My
I really don't want
gosh.
to go too far down this track because I don't want it to become a really depressing interview, but it is a quite a dark part of the job. And I think it is a necessary part because the alternative is for animals to suffer. But
Steve,
yeah,
thank you. I mean, you just reached probably every single person who's listening Not every person has a pet, but so many of us do. I literally have never thought of that. I will look at veterinarians very differently with a lot more compassion now. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right. Now let's go to, you have an amazing story that led you to even think about careers. Can you talk about that from the beginning? What happened after realizing, I don't think this is it for me? Tell us.
So I think I want to go right back to my parents immigrated from South Africa to New Zealand. You probably would have noticed by now that I have an accent, not an Australian accent, a Kiwi accent.
I love
So
it.
they immigrated to New Zealand when I was quite small. And from a young age, we were taught to work hard. And there was very much this idea that you got good grades at school and you were going to go to university. And from a young age, my parents kind of instilled in me this idea that I was probably going to become a veterinarian.
Really?
And,
They were too?
yeah,
One of your
absolutely. Yeah, so they weren't by any means forcing it down my throat, but they definitely were. Oh, you like animals, Steve, and you're good at science. Why don't you become a vet? So I had this message throughout my childhood.
Oh.
So I reached 17 or 18, and let's be honest, when you're 17 or 18, you're not really seriously thinking about your career. You're more worried about, the next party you're going to go to and whether you fit in with your friends. And so it came to the stage where I had to choose what I was going to do. I got a little bit of career advice, but it was pretty useless, to be completely honest. And I did what most people do. I listened to my parents. I'd got good grades at school, and so I got into veterinary school and enjoyed veterinary school. I enjoy learning, made good friends. And then I qualified as a veterinarian in 2013 and very quickly realized that this career was not the dream job it was made out to be. So fast forward a few years, and I'm in a highly stressful job with demanding clients, doing sort of 20 to 30 consults a day, consult after consult, very demanding people, very unrewarding too, because you just don't have enough time to develop a relationship with an individual person. You've got sort of 10 to 15 minutes per consult. So what was happening? I was coming home from work grumpy, and my partner at the time, my now wife, somehow, I was coming home from work, and one day she said to me, I don't look forward to you coming home from work. And I don't even know if it was those exact words. It might have actually been, I dread you coming back from work. And for me, that was a huge wake up call.
Wow.
Jeepers, is this actually, I kind of knew that I was grumpy because I'll be snapping at her for minor things, but to actually hear those words was a real wake up call. And that forced me to really start looking inward for the first time in my life. I got life coaching from a guy called Chris Turner, who really changed my life in that he helped me better understand myself emotionally. And that's the first thing I would say for anyone looking to change career is before you go and look at what other jobs are out there, what things you might be best suited to, you really need to emotionally understand yourself. You need to get a better self-awareness. I mean, I think I read somewhere that majority of people believe that they're self-aware, but research shows only about 20% of people are actually self-aware.
Wow.
So it's not to say that you have no self-awareness, it's to say that you can improve your self-awareness. So that was a big starting point for me, getting better self-awareness of what drive me, what made me tick. And then I started to get some career help myself. And in the process, realized that I really like talking to people. I started a couple of podcasts. And at the same
That's
time,
brave. While you were a vet, you did that?
yes.
You were working a lot. Okay. That's
Yeah.
brave.
So it was more like a hobby thing on the side for starters. But initially the podcast was called Not the 9 to 5. It was very much a hobby thing. And then it sort of evolved into Escape the 9 to 5. And the reason I started it was alongside the fact that I like talking to people is at the time I noticed so many friends who had gone to college got these very successful jobs on paper, but yet finding themselves unhappy. The number of people I looked at on LinkedIn, you'd look at them and you'd think, gee, this person's really smashing it at life. They're a commercial banker or a financial analyst or chartered accountant or, veterinarian. On paper, looking very successful, but then reaching their late 20s or early 30s and saying, am I really going to be doing this for another 20 to 30 years? And so that's really what inspired I guess, to get into the coaching space and help other people, because I've had this journey myself, and it's a learning process and I'm still learning as I go, but really helping other people to escape the 9 to 5. And what does escaping the 9 to 5 mean? So initially, when I first was going through this, there was probably a little bit of resentment towards my parents, resentment towards the university system, resentment towards the way our society is structured in terms of capitalism. But really, escaping the 9 to 5 isn't to say chuck in the towel and go and live on an island and smoke weed and go surfing and do as little work as possible.
That's not bad for a week or two.
But it's to say that it's finding work that works for you. So designing work to work for you and figuring out what that means to you. So some people might enjoy working 50 hours a week if they're doing what they enjoy doing. To someone else, they might be looking for more balance. They might want more time with family. And really, maybe they only need 25 to 30 hours of work a week. So not only figuring out the amount of time that you're spending, but obviously, ideally, doing something closer to what energizes you as opposed to what drains you and causes you to come home and snap at your wife and
That's an amazing story. I got questions. If you always don't mind. Kathy. I always do. So what your story is, it's got this fascinating twist that I think a lot of people think in the US, for instance, being a vet is one of the most difficult, most competitive fields there are. Cool. So I think a lot of people think, well, you got through it, you're in it, you must love it. And I think everybody needs to understand just what you said. None of that guarantees feeling fulfilled, feeling you're in the right place. None of that, that I worked my tail off and I was number one in class. You have to know that, right? Number two, another thing I want to amplify, you are so right about self-awareness. I find that we might be aware of certain things, but we're not aware of the right things. We're not aware of how I feel inside, how I feel every day, how my mind feels, my soul, my spirit, my body, what I love, what I'm worth in the world. We're not aware of the things we need to be aware of. So I just couldn't agree more. Now, here's a question I have. I'm dying to know the answer. If you came to me as a career coach and you were in the throes of that point in time where your wife-to-be said, I dread you coming home. You're horrible. The first thing I would say, I would want you to tease out, and I want to be clear about this and see what you think. I call it the pendulum effect, where we get so broken down in how we're doing our work that we want to run to the farthest ends of the earth. Like, I can't stand that I have 20 consults a day. I'm working for this ass who I don't even like. I don't know if that was the case. So I want to be a surfer, or whatever it is. For me, it was, I'm done with corporate life. I'm going to be a therapist. And that was a great journey in terms of the training, but the identity, the professional identity wasn't right. What I want to ask you is, if I had said to you, first of all, let's get a lot more self-awareness about what isn't working. But let me ask you this. Could it be that how you're being a vet is the problem? That you actually don't want to do 20 consults. You want to do 10, 5. You want to run your own practice. You want to get rid of all this staff that's making you nuts. What would the answer have been?
Well, it's funny. Excuse me, Kathy. It's funny you say that. And that very soon after I got the life coaching, we went into lockdown with COVID, and I was still working as a vet at the very same practice, but our hours were reduced. And because we were doing things by distance, the nurses would go out into the parking lot. They would
Right.
get the animals, bring them in. I'd have a nurse and a colleague who I liked essentially doing the consults with them. My hours were reduced. And
Did
I
you love it
found
more?
like it was a far more enjoyable, it's definitely not what I want to be doing long term, but it was far more enjoyable in that frame than it was getting absolutely slammed, where I think what I found as I did the emotional work myself. So one of the things I found really useful was doing an emotional journal. So that is each and every day, at the end of the day, writing down 3 feelings that come up during the day. Now it sounds really sort of woo woo and wishy
No, I
washy
love
and
it.
stuff,
Not at
but
all.
when at first I started doing it and I kind of felt like it was a waste of time, to be completely honest. But then
So
after a
that
few
was an
weeks,
exercise that was given to you to do by your
yeah,
life coach.
yes,
Yeah.
by my life coach, yes. And I sort of thought, what's
What
this
am I doing?
achieving? But then after a few weeks, I started to notice common themes. And one of the common themes I got, because I was becoming more emotionally aware by identifying these things, is I'd be in a consult doing a vaccination, which is about as low stress as a consult should be, but yet at the end of that consult being absolutely drained. What I noticed is it wasn't the work I was doing, it was the people I was interacting with. So if someone was really demanding and high strung, they would take all the energy from me and I would just leave or finish that consult being exhausted. Now I've sort of kind of lost my train of thought. I'm trying to remember what this was
You
relating to.
noticed that that was the problem, that
Well, that was a big part of the problem, and just by doing the emotions journal and becoming more self-aware, it even helped me to realize parts of work that I was really enjoying. So um, I was doing surgery, routine surgery that's not very stressful because it's sort of like routine stuff you do all the time. And I was working with nurses that I got along well with and having a bit of banter and having a few jokes and thinking, actually,
that's great.
I quite enjoy this. And I enjoy the days more where I'm not spending the entire day consulting.
So you are illustrating exactly the process. And I love the journal exercise. Here's what I want to hit home on. If you had come to me and said, I think I don't want to chuck being a vet entirely, what I always love to do is try to make you more powerful, more boundaried, more self aware, more confident right this minute before you make any career changes, because those boundaries, or how drained narcissistic people make us, that's going to follow us if you become a life coach or not, or, a poet. You got troublesome people wherever we go. So what I love is COVID made you realize, wait a minute, I kind of like this, and this is better, and I don't have to deal with the high strung person. It gave you the opportunity to sort out, wait, these are the things I do like. These are things I'd like to do more of. Am I making sense?
Yeah, and what I'd say on top of that is for any working professional, in particular with medical professionals who I guess sort of relate to their story a bit more, is that when you start doing that self work and understanding what drives you, you're not necessarily going to find the perfect next career for you tomorrow, but you might find that an example that comes to mind is someone who really likes the technical details. They really like, the details of the medicine and going into the depths of the medicine.
Yeah.
They might find, oh, I really enjoy like reading the textbook and understanding this disease really thoroughly. And from that, identifying that means that they could get a job, say, as a technical advisor, where they're, working for the government or working for an animal health company, doing a technical role, reading uh, lots of technical information. That might not be their dream job, but it's a step in the right direction because they've identified what makes them tick. But if they just say, I'm hating my job, I hate this, I'm going to quit, I'm going to just, as you say, the pendulum effect, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go and do the complete opposite of
No.
whatever I'm doing now, that's actually not going to help you find where you need to go.
Right.
And
It
just,
eclipses the learning. The learning
yes,
is not there,
yeah.
right?
And just
Wow.
to add to that, purely from a career perspective, because let's be honest, we've got to pay the bills. If you,
Mm,
and this isn't always the case, and it sounds like you made it work for yourself, Kathy, but with the pendulum effect, that
mm.
sort of like quit, I'm going to throw the towel and do something completely different. you're potentially just diving straight to the bottom of the pecking order. Whereas if you identify your strengths within your own industry, you can then get potentially quite a respectable job that pays relatively well and is heading you in the right direction towards what might ideally be your dream job in 5 or 10 years' time.
I love it. I love every word. I'm coming to you as a coach. All right. Now, there's another piece to this. I'd love to hear what you think. When people do this work, sometimes they discover, okay, wait a minute. I do like being a vet, but to be honest, there's more to me. There's more that I want in my life. So for me, for instance, I wanted children deeply. I wanted to be a mother and I wanted to be a professional at the same time. I wanted that. But I think we've mentioned, but I have other things on the side. I'm a singer on the side. And my ex, we were married for many, many years. He wanted to make his living as a jazz percussionist. He's a well-known jazz percussionist. I, on the other hand, have made a little money as a singer, been on records, sung at Carnegie Hall. I don't want to have a living singing. It doesn't bring me joy. But if I don't sing every week or regularly in a group, I'm not as happy. I'm depressed.
Yes.
So can you talk about how you've seen and how you help people? All right, they figure out how to better the career they're in and they're making good money, but they realize this is not the be all and end all of a full life. Are you finding that with some of your clients and the people you work with?
Yeah, 100%. So some of the people that I work with, what they find is that there is that niche within the profession that they're currently doing that they're quite happy in. But when they really do the self-work, they realize it is really important to me that I have a day a week to myself. And that might mean, going and playing tennis or going and singing, going and doing, it might even be going and just taking it easy, and just having that complete shift in the hours that you're doing might be the biggest part to changing you from being in a job that you dislike to one that you actually enjoy.
That's the truth. It's amazing how even like at my age, I've said I can't work this hard for I don't want to work this hard for another 10 years. I don't. But I don't want to stop working and I love what I do. So part of this, what we're talking about is if you fiercely prioritize, if for instance, I only want to work 3 days a week, what would I give up? And it's an incredible exercise. Like as much as I adore this podcast, it's a full-time job to run it weekly for me. It is.
Sure.
So I've decided to go bi-weekly, and I said, let me give it a try and maybe I'm going to miss it. And one thing it is hard. If I book you now, you may not be published at the interview. It's months.
Yeah.
But I'm getting used to that. So the point is, one question is, if I were to back off and give myself 1 or 2 days where nothing is in the calendar, first of all, what would I let go of? And then what would I fill in with? Does that make sense to you?
I would argue that you already know the answer to that question.
Most of us do, you mean?
But yeah, and because if you honestly had to right here and now say what is the one thing that you're going to cut from your life in order to go down to a 4-day week, I think deep down we know what that is. Another thing I'll say, and this is not to become your financial advisor, is that we as working professionals get to a certain level of income, and there's what we call lifestyle creep, which is you used to be happy with the I would name the beer brand that I used to buy at university, but no one would know the brand.
What is it? I want to know.
Oh, it's called Tui that I used to buy at university.
Tui.
And then you leave university and you go into the working world, and suddenly you're spending another $5 a box on Heinekens, and then you get to your 30s and suddenly you like wine and you're spending $25 on a bottle of wine. Right. And with everything that you're doing, when you look at where you're spending your money, that's often the first starting point to be able to reduce your hours, is if you're honest with yourself. Do you need to go on that overseas holiday twice a year? I know people that are so unhappy in their jobs, and yet they'll go and spend a month overseas every year, spending $20,000, $30,000 on an overseas holiday that makes them happy for a few weeks,
I know.
only to have to go back to that same job to pay for their next overseas holiday. So really reducing your the amount that you're spending might enable you to go from your 40-hour, 5-day-a-week job to maybe a 4-day-a-week job where you can do those things on the side.
These are incredible insights. All right, one more question, then I know I have to let you go, but here's a question. Often I can hear what our listeners are saying, like, okay, now wait a minute here, huh? And, or wow, here's a question that comes up. I have my own business, so I can construct it any way I want. Most people I work with don't have that. And, it's taken me a long time. And I did what you're talking about, went to the bottom, went through all my savings just so I could get a master's in marriage and family therapy, start a business, But what do you how do you work with people who they're not going to be able to actually leave a 5-day-a-week job? That's not going to be in their future for a while. So in other words, many of the people I work with, they can't just do it 4 days a week.
So there is a way. I would always encourage, at least in the starting point, even if it's for a period of time, to say to your work, look, I'm feeling burnt out at the moment. I can't afford to go down to a 4-day-a-week job long term. But for, as a starting point, you've got your annual leave, and instead of going on an overseas holiday, use that time to better understand yourself, get some coaching, life coaching, career coaching, to better understand what makes you tick. And then to go back to that 5-day-a-week job, if you really can't reduce your hours, if you've done the self-work, you can actually change jobs either within a workplace or to a new workplace. But there are ways within that very workplace to transition into something that better resembles what's good work for you. So I know one of the guys that I interviewed on my podcast, he started auditioning for roles within his own industry. He was working in an advertising industry, and his role was, I want to say, something in sales, but he was far more interested in the strategy. And so what he would do is every Monday morning, he would present his case to his colleagues. And then a few months down the line, when a role came up, he'd essentially been auditioning for the role for months.
You mean he would present strategy? He would be that role. He would say, I'd love to have a strategy meeting, and he would demonstrate that. Is that what he would do?
I don't know the exact details, but he would, outside of his role in the sales department, he would present, he would spend a few hours a week doing strategic stuff within the advertising role to showcase to his colleagues that he was the person. Because the only person that really cares about your career is yourself. And it can be so easy to think that behind the scenes, your manager or your boss knows that Kathy really wants to go into this area, but really they're too busy worrying about their own problems, and they don't realize necessarily that you're unhappy in your current role.
It's so good. I remember when I became a coach, so I was a marketing VP, marketing director, and I found no meaning in it, pretty early on. But I didn't think I could, especially at 41, when it was my last job in corporate, I didn't think I could transfer to an HR or whatever. It never occurred to me. When I became a career coach, I had a client who did that, who said, you know what, darn it, let's say it's Pepsi. I'm in marketing and I want to be in HR. I went in and talked to them, and wouldn't you know it, they thought so well of me. They said they would fund my transition. They would fund the training. I was like, I can't even believe it. Like I didn't even think I could do that.
Yeah.
So my clients are always, that was, 16 years ago when I was just starting out as a career coach, but you're exactly right. And, find a way to do something that is meaningful to you. Volunteer, take on that charitable cause at your organization. Sometimes that's going to make you work a little more, but find where the meaning is. I love it. I love it. One thing that's fascinating to me you all probably take 4 weeks off in the summer, right?
Yeah, I remember.
We in the
when I said I was
US
about to
don't
say 4
even take
weeks.
our vacation.
Don't you
There's
guys
all
only get 2 weeks?
What's that?
I thought you guys only get 2 weeks.
We only get 2 weeks, but the research shows that Americans don't even tend to take their full time off.
Yeah.
So at least you're a little ahead of the game. I finally want to. Oh, go ahead.
One thing I want to say, Kathy, because you sort of mentioned Pepsi, and it just got me thinking about the this sort of corporate world that we live in. Which, when you really think about it, it's only the last sort of 200 odd years that we've lived in a world where the most important thing is the profit at the end of the year. And really, do you want to live your life with the idea that you're making money for someone else? And the thing people regret the most in their life is not the things that they do, it's the things that they don't do. You don't want to wait until you're lying on your deathbed to say, oh, I wish I'd lived my life differently. If you're unhappy in your job, you need to make changes now. And I know that you've had Bronnie Ware on your podcast.
Fantastic. The Top Regrets of the Dying. People, read her book.
Yeah.
And nobody regrets that they didn't work hard enough. Nobody at the end of their life regrets that.
That was the number one regret, actually, was that I wish I hadn't worked so hard.
That's it. That's so beautiful, Steve.
And I wish I hadn't been more true to yourself.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly what we're talking about. I think you have such a unique perspective. And I think vets and medical professionals and everyone else, we can learn so much from you. So, Steve, where do we scoop up all this incredible wisdom? Where do we send people?
So just before we do that, Kathy, I just wanted to summarize my framework for escaping the 9 to 5. And there is no way that we'll have time today to go through it. So I just want to really very briefly summarize what it looks like. So the first step is gaining self-awareness, understanding yourself better, because if you don't understand yourself, how are you possibly going to know what is the ideal career for you? The second step is career learning. So that's understanding your career strengths, understanding your values, understanding your purpose, and pointing your work and life view compass in the same direction, so you know you're heading in the right path. There is no ideal job for anyone. There's just a compass which should point you in the right direction. And what you want right now is going to be different from what you want in 10 years' time. The third step is trial and error. So that's actually doing something. You can have all the information in the world until you actually go out there, network with people, try things, do a side project, try something within your workplace, maybe even consider changing jobs, but you've got to do trial and error in some shape or form. So that's step number 3. Step number 4 is transition or jump. Most people would be more comfortable with the transition. And if you do it properly, you shouldn't ever really be jumping. You should be jumping with a safety net. So there is, at some point, you're going to have to change to something else. So there's got to be that transition. And then the final step is, once you've moved into the new role, is to not magically think that everything's fixed and you're in this perfect job. I guarantee you, your next job will not be your perfect one. It'll be a step in the right direction. So the final step is thriving. And in order to thrive, there are 3 skills that everyone needs in the modern workplace. 1 is to have curiosity. 2 is to give and receive feedback. And 3 is to grow your grit. So have more, things aren't always going to go well in your career, and you just need to be able to develop resilience and understand that there's going to be good days and bad days in any job.
What a framework. I adore it.
That's just a little summary of what we do at Escape the 9 to 5. And so then, to answer your question, Kathy, where can you find out more about me? You can find me on LinkedIn, Steve-Oehley, and hopefully Kathy will provide a link so that you don't have to spell my last name. You can also go to Twitter or Instagram at Steve-Oehley. And you can, if you want to contact me personally, you can email steve.oehley@escapethe9to5.net. Or if you want to get really personal and you send me a nice message, you can even reach me at steve.oehley@gmail.com.
Oh, and then you can show up at your door and have lunch.
I won't give you my
much.
address. Yeah.
I love it. I think I just agree with everything you're saying. Not that that means it's perfect, but I think if people follow this framework, there is no way they will not progress towards more meaningful, more joyful work and more meaningful and joyful life. So everyone, I hope you are inspired. I'm so inspired, Steve.
The last comment I want to make, Kathy, is, I've got this framework and people might think, what does a 32-year-old vet really know about careers? I'm no career expert at all. And I'm glad that people would be asking that question. It's the result of a combination of interviewing over 100 people on the topic, plus reading all the top books on making a career change. So by no means I'm the expert. I'm still learning on this journey myself, but I've learned from the best minds in the world on this. And there are some genuinely proven methods for changing career, including stuff used by Stanford University to change career in a productive and meaningful way.
I adore it. Couldn't agree more. And I'm going to add one more thing and then let everyone go. When you're working with someone like a coach, it's the relationship that moves you forward. When I listen to you, I feel that there's so much learning, but there's so much more than that. There's so much more than a framework. I have a 5-step framework too, which is similar to yours. But when you're working with someone, it's also that you trust them, that you feel safe, that you feel inspired, that you feel listened to, that you feel understood. And I think a lot of helping professionals don't give you that feeling. So I think it's also people, if you feel, gosh, I think Steve could really understand me and really help, would feel safe working with him, or this framework speaks to me. That's why we're helpful, that people feel uniquely drawn to what you have to say versus what I have to say. There's a little more going on even than the intellectual part. There's a spiritual part.
100%.
Do you agree?
100%. I think that's the biggest part of it all, really, is to, I don't know, how religious particular people are, but just spiritual in the sense that when you start to really understand yourself better, you grow in ways that I can't even describe ways that I've grown in the last few years. And, if you told me 2 or 3 years ago, I'd be sitting opposite you doing a podcast interview, I wouldn't have sort of believed it. But from those low points in your life where you come home from work and your wife says she doesn't look forward to you coming home, those can be some of the most important moments in your life. So if you're personally right now in the pit of despair in your own career and you're feeling like things aren't going your way, that can potentially be, the phoenix rising from the ashes.
I love it. I call it the breakdown moment before the breakthrough. Sometimes it's got to be the roughest thing you've ever gone through. Rising from the ashes. That's it. That's what you're helping people do. Thank you so much, Steve. I loved it. Thanks, back Kathy. Again. Such a joy to talk to you. All right, people. We want questions. I say this every time. Please, wherever. Steve is so open. Find him on LinkedIn. Ask. Say, I listened to this. And you know what? I got to ask you. I don't understand this. I don't understand that. Both of us will answer your questions as best we can. And I do hope you'll check out everything Steve offers and his podcast. And we'd love to hear from you. Hope you're inspired. Thank you again and have a wonderful Finding Brave 2 weeks. We'll see you next time. Thank you again, Steve.
Thanks, Kathy. It's been
Thanks so much for joining us today. And please don't forget to check out findingbrave.org for more programs, resources, and tips. And tune in next time for your weekly dose of Finding Brave.